Oh! Spilt.
We always use that.
Could have watered all over you.
I like that.
Yeah, Shrek. Shrek, don't preach. It's just for drinking.
What is that? There's ice.
It's frozen.
You put ice in there?
No, it's just frozen water. This was in my car. Welcome back to Life Lessons in Film.
Hello.
Today we're going to be making sense of life through tar. That's it. That's the name. That's the name of the movie. It follows Lydia. Lydia the Tar Lady.
This is a fall from grace story. A famous conductor from the height of her career to her absolute demise.
Yeah.
She's an esteemed conductor. Many accolades. She has written books. She's also an EGOT.
Oh yes, she's an EGOT.
She's an EGOT. She also lectures at Juilliard. She's preparing to perform this famous symphony, Mahler's Symphony No. 5.
Yeah.
It's going to be recorded. It's just basically going to be the capstone to her insanely incredible career. When you're done watching this movie, you have so many questions.
Yes.
A lot of people will be like, this happened, this happened.
Yeah.
No, this happened.
Yeah.
Right? We find out that there may be issues.
Yes.
There are lots of things that happen that come to pass that suggest that Lydia has been abusing her power by way of treating badly the people she works with, like the orchestra, for example, or taking advantage sexually of her students. And all of these things
start to mount up.
And she ends up, you know, from performing as a conductor in Berlin to then
fleeing
performing.
The country.
We're not really sure where it is, but then she's performing in front of like cosplayers.
Once you board this ship, there's no turning back.
There's one student who's kind of stalking her, and it looks like she's blacklisted this student. I think what she was hoping for is that Lydia would get her off the blacklist, basically, because Lydia has emailed everyone in the game
no one
hire her. Don't hire her. It seems like there was some kind of romantic relationship, or at least maybe Lydia was interested in the student, and the student wasn't interested, and so Lydia just decides, I am going to cut you down, it looks like.
Yeah, that person that she cuts down ends up killing herself.
And she deletes all of the emails where she's blacklisting her, and then all the communication that she's been sending to them.
The whole movie's ambiguous. Not only even though there's certain things that happen with her that you're like, did that really happen? Was that just in her head? But really, even when it comes to the allegations, we never get definitive proof that it was true, right? I mean, you think, okay, she was being sketchy deleting emails, but you know, when she says
she was disturbed, I mean, she fixated on me.
In what way?
She sent me weird gifts. She trolled me online. She tried to send me signals.
Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. We don't know.
Some events felt like they may not have been happening. Some things felt like, is there something going on with her mind? Maybe she's in a certain kind of mental state. In the beginning of the movie, when she's getting ready to go out and perform, do you remember all those little tics and stuff that she does?
Yeah.
And then she takes a pill. And she just seems like someone who has a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And that kind of pressure can take a toll on a person. And it just seems like there is a sense of her being out of it throughout the movie, with the dreams and the weird things that we see.
Yeah, there's a metronome that was set off. She doesn't know who started it.
And then she goes to Olga's apartment.
Yeah,
and
it's like abandoned.
It's
There's no one that lives there.
Yeah, so those kinds of things make me wonder. We're seeing events that are unfolding in her own head.
Yeah.
And I feel like if that is the case, I wonder if she's tormented by the things that she's done. Every single relationship she has, she's a gaslighter. She's a manipulator to get the things that she wants all the time. Even when she fires that guy, Sebastian, I think is his name, she gaslights the
Lydia
out of him. She's so good at that.
She pulls it around again and makes him feel like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking.
We know the things you do, the little favors you grant.
I really don't know what to say, Sebastian. You, of all people, have the temerity to question my integrity.
No, I'm sorry, Maestro. I don't know what I'm saying.
No, it's clear you know exactly what you're saying. I mean, if that's how you really feel about me, then wouldn't you say that staying is entirely out of the question?
No, please, Maestro, please forgive me.
For what?
And then with the assistant, I think her name is Francesca, always dangling the carrot. For someone to live that way, I feel like you'd be worried every single time because you're basically creating enemies. You're creating people that don't support you or that you can't really feel secure in.
When you're stringing people along, eventually it catches up to you. So Francesca eventually gets fed up with being strung along all the time.
Well,
she quits.
She quits, yeah.
The only communication we've received from Francesca was an email to my assistant in the middle of the night tendering her immediate resignation, stating she would be in contact when she had more details to provide.
I feel like there was such a betrayal
for
this person who was just literally dying at the cross for you. Honestly, like every single time she's working to the bone, this woman, Francesca, and Lydia knew that she wanted to become a conductor herself, and allows her to think that when this guy, Sebastian, leaves, you're going to take the position, and then that doesn't happen. How can you have sincere relationships and have people that you can trust in that position? Because you're not cultivating those kinds of relationships. And I feel like even if you're not killing anyone, there's a seediness to the way that you relate to people. And you know that when you keep doing that, when you keep treating people that way, it's going to come back to you somehow.
Her partner decides to basically cut Lydia out of her daughter's life.
Yeah,
and
so
just
nothing works out.
everything's falling apart around her.
Don't do this. Please don't do this. Please don't.
When Sharon, her partner, says to her,
You asked me what were the politics? What were the moves? How could we swing it?
how do I work the politics in this situation? Help me out here so we can navigate this. Maybe she learned too well, and then she started to turn it against people. At the top, I guess, of any industry or any community, I guess there's that pressure to function at the top of your game all the time, and then that also creates a lot of competition, envy, betrayal.
You kind of see the impact that power has on individuals. We give people power at the end of the day. They say, judge people by their character. Someone has a big house, someone has a big car. This is like in the most superficial sense.
Right.
And you're in your mind, okay, well, you are someone who's to be respected because you have money, you wear certain clothes, designer clothes, etc., right? And that's more of a materialistic way to judge someone. So then we say, look at a person's accomplishments. And that will tell you more about what this person is like, whether or not this person is valuable. But when I'm looking at this situation with Lydia, I'm like, looking at her accomplishments, she is assessed by her accomplishments. But in this way, her accomplishments feel, to me, quite materialistic.
In 2013, Berlin elected Tar as its principal conductor in succession to Andres Davids, and she's remained there ever since. Like her mentor, Leonard Bernstein, Tar has a particular affinity for Mahler, whose 9 symphonies she recorded during her Big 5 stints.
For me, it kind of made me reflect on how accomplishments looked at on their own could be quite materialistic, because you're like, okay, this person came from nothing. She's now a big conductor. Being a conductor, she's a conductor. She teaches at Juilliard and she's conducted all these symphonies. She's written all these amazing books. If you looked at those accomplishments, those are accomplishments. For someone to have done that, it's you think this is a valuable human being. This is an incredible person, exemplary person that anybody would aspire to be. So those are just accomplishments on their own, right? But then when you're looking at the backdrop against all of which this is happening, then comes the content of this person's character. I think the problem with power and fame, people in these kinds of positions, the celebrities, we forget all about the content of the person's character and we just focus on the accomplishments. When she's interacting with people, my God, she's so arrogant. She's allowed to be arrogant that way.
That's maybe a theme of the movie, is she herself starts to get judged now, or by like these other older conductors. She talks about her issues with Beethoven, and she's like, she kind of alludes to him maybe being homophobic or something, which she's like, me being a lesbian is kind of like, makes me think, how do I feel about old Beethoven? But then I listen to his music, and then I judge it in this other way, and I can't help but just be in awe of what he accomplished with his art. And then I think they also have a conversation about Schopenhauer at one point, and she also brings up, I was like, didn't he also throw a woman down the stairs one time? So in the movie, there's a lot of talking about people's like reputation and accomplishments versus what they did in their private life or how they treated people.
And it's really tricky, right? That's the point that guy's trying to make. I can't respect Bach because he,
he's a white cis man.
Who, well, there was also the issues of morality there too, right?
Oh, yeah, he had a bunch of
kids.
Probably from multiple marriages. Maybe.
He had a bunch of kids. He doesn't go into the details. That whole conversation is really tricky. I felt like neither Lydia nor the guy were really trying to have that kind of conversation where you're open, open conversation. It felt like those conversations where you just talk to someone, you're talking at someone, and as the person is communicating to you, you're just preparing a response, but you're not really listening.
I would say Bach's misogynistic life makes it kind of impossible for me to take his music seriously.
Come on. What do you mean by that?
Well, didn't he sire like 20 kids?
Yes, that's documented, along with a considerable amount of music. But I'm sorry, I'm unclear as to what his prodigious skills in the marital bed have to do with B minor.
Lydia was kind of more about, judge the people off their art. And kind of, you don't want to, we all have our issues with our private life. We all have skeletons in the closet, right? So that's kind of, you know, a moot point because we all have that. He's kind of the other way where it's like it's all about the private life and nothing to do with the stuff that they do out in the world.
Which was interesting, right? Because before he talks about who he's inspired by, and it's Anna something. And so I'm not into Bach, but I'm inspired by Anna because Bach was a cis male, white, and, you know, had a bunch of kids. I think, to her credit, Lydia really tries to educate this guy out of this superficiality, that very basic way of assessing people and not giving respect to the nuance of human beings.
Yeah, and to those that came before. So if you're a conductor or a composer, there's still so much you can learn from people in your field that came hundreds of years ago. Because it all builds on each other.
And so I feel like at first she does try to show, like, you know, it's complicated, right? But like, this is art, you know, the idea of looking at art on its own, you know, without everything else, right? So she's trying really hard to educate him, but he's like, no, I'm sorry, I just can't. And then she gets really frustrated and is like, you say you are inspired by Anna, whoever's last, I don't know her. Yeah, this artist. She's from Iceland. She's blonde. She's a white blonde woman. Right? And she's hot, right? Everyone, right? And then she asks the class, turn your attention to the person at the piano.
All right, now let's turn our gaze back to the piano bench up there and see if we can square how any of those things possibly relate to the person we see seated before us. Where are you going?
The whole time he complains that I cannot take Bach seriously because he's a straight guy who's white. But I'm inspired by the women.
Yeah, well, she's different also from you.
She's different also from you.
And that's ways.
What does that mean? Do we take you seriously then? Do we not take you seriously? Because what standards would you want us to be judging you on? I thought that was a great conversation. I personally felt like this was, I guess, it's not a shot, but like it's like a reflection on cancel culture and the dangers of cancel culture. That is a danger of cancel culture, looking at dissecting things in that superficial way.
There's almost some virtue signaling there of like, no, I don't do Bach because of this, and this, and that makes me kind of having progressed morally beyond Bach.
When you think about Lydia, when she talks about there's so much you have to sacrifice as an artist, when she's saying that, she's trying to change his view on this. It's also her own personal experience. This is a very patriarchal environment that she's operating in. She would have had to fight tooth and nail to get to that position. It is hard for a woman to get that position. And so she actually has that personal experience of what she's trying to get this guy to see. I think the guy's concern that he expresses as a Black person with an Indigenous background, you know, there's certain challenges which I feel like she could have actually identified with being a woman who's gay in this kind of community. And that's something that they could have bonded over.
Could have related better.
They could have related better. And I feel like, unfortunately, you know, sometimes that happens. And that's where I'm like, you know, sometimes when you're so staunchly for a certain kind of ideology, you miss opportunities to see the commonalities that you share with someone. That could really be a moment of growth. I think that that was something that was lost on both their ends. And I mean, I feel like there is a truth to what she's saying where art on its own moves you. No matter who wrote the song, if the song is good, like if you heard the song and you didn't know who wrote it, if that song is amazing and it taps
then clearly it can stand apart from the person.
And at least that's a conversation to be had. Whether or not it's right, we don't know. It's a great opportunity for discussion.
The thing is too, there's no easy answer. I think that's maybe for her too, where you get to the point where you're like, I mean, she's pointed out, she admits, she's like, I have issues with Beethoven or other conductors because you know their private lives do affect how you see them or their music, say. But it's no easy answer to say, well, then I just can't listen to it anymore, or it's not worth still remembering or learning, you know? There's no easy answer to it. Most things don't have an easy answer, but...
Don't be so eager to be offended. The narcissism of small differences leads to the most boring conformity.
I think there's a couple different uses or variations of what narcissism of minor difference means to different people in different fields. But the one, at least in terms of like pop culture, that as far as I understand it, is the idea that, you know, a group of people that are all very conformist, they don't want to believe that they just follow along with everybody else, and they want to believe they have some individuality, so that they'll pick little things that are very safe, that are not challenging the ideology or the dogma, and they can feel like, well, so I am an individual because I only like peanut butter in my sandwiches. Everyone else in my bubble thinks that you need to also have jam with your peanut butter. So I'm an individual. I'm a free thinker. I question things, you know? That's the idea, the narcissism of believing that makes you actually a critical thinker, an individual, is, you know, deluding yourself. And I think, you know, it's very easy to fall into that. There's this race to who can be the most virtuous or moral
Yeah.
You know, there's this weird kind of competition, this endless need to be one up on someone else for who can be the most moral. I think that the danger there with social media and that is you have a lot of people that feel like they're all individual, critically thinking vigilantes, fair and just, but that narcissism minor difference really keeps them as a ideological blob. This dogmatic kind of force. It can get dangerous real quick when, again, who will defend you when no one else is around to defend you because everyone else has been accused of something.
Well, nowadays, to be accused is the same as being guilty.
Now let's turn our gaze back to the piano bench up there to a super hot young woman. That's very good. Now, you can masturbate, but what are you actually doing to me?
The reason for her getting canceled and how she's treating her students. Yeah. There are systemic issues there that are left unattended to because you're canceling one person. Cancel culture cancels the individual.
Not the institution.
And not the system.
Yeah, not the system.
So and so that's a failing there with this whole trend of canceling people. Yeah. Because, okay, Lydia's going to leave, you're going to cancel her, but someone else is going to replace her because and do exactly the same thing. How long are we going to cancel people?
It's kind of like a new version of when people would just try and assassinate the head of a company. Okay, great. Well, then the second command will step up.
Exactly,
that did that in the past. Many people that try and assassinate certain figures thinking, okay, now we fixed it. We'll take out one person.
If Bach's talent can be reduced to his gender, birth country, religion, sexuality, and so on, then so can yours. Someday, Max, when you go out into the world and you guest conduct for a major or minor orchestra, what kind of criteria would you hope that they would use to do this?
How would you want to be judged then?
Exactly.
You know, just for your race and your gender? Is that how you want to be reduced to?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't sound so great to be reduced just to that. When years pass, that's probably what you'll be reduced to if people look at things that way.
Really, she's a tricky character, Lydia, you know. The thing that helps me sympathize with her a little bit is just how much she's done to get to where she is. Right. Understanding that, even though we don't really see it. Towards the end, when she's at her home and she's talking to her brother, it was kind of like, wow, this woman has dragged herself out of a really tough situation. That's not an easy thing to do for anyone, right? But then there was also the way that she relates to how fiercely she protects her daughter to the point of bullying a child, right? And that's a hard thing to do. I don't think that as an adult, bullying a kid is not something that you're waking up today. Like, I don't want to go and bully someone else's child. No. But, you know, if you've ever been bullied, you know that it never really works to look at kids who bully as, oh, they're kids. You have to be there and you have to explain. There's so many things that are happening in the background. Most likely their parents are treating them like tar. So that's why they're bullies themselves. So you're not going to be able to actually even go to the parent and talk to the parent and say, hey, get your kid to stop bullying my kid. That would actually make the situation worse. The relationship between her and her kid, you know, that's the one relationship where we can say, okay, this is...
there's some humanity there.
There's some humanity there.
Said the one, both the cock and the hen. We'll bear the pall.
And who'll sing a song?
I said the thrush as sat on a bush. I'll sing a song.
She's really making... There's a tenderness we see in Lydia that we don't see when she's with Petra, that we don't see with anyone else. So that's where I'm just kind of like, you know what? She's really making an effort there with the daughter. However, the daughter does seem to be sad. Because I'm like, even if your parent, you have a parent who's trying to love you and show you love and fighting bullies for you, you still have a parent who is in a relationship with your other parent and it's not really that great. Lydia is cheating.
It looks like a cold, sad home.
Yeah, it looks like a cold, sad home. They don't get intimate. They look just like colleagues who live together. And I think there are lots of resentments that Sharon has. We see the gaslighting. She gaslights Sharon whenever, why did you go with Olga?
Did you have fun with her? My back is killing me. Francesca left, and I simply needed someone to carry my bags. I mean, who was I supposed to ask to go with me? Knut?
And so she kind of like sows the seeds of doubt, even though I feel like Sharon was justified to be concerned.
I wondered if you'd be at all bothered if we were to hold auditions.
Well, that's a bit unorthodox. But in theory, I have no objection.
It's unconventional. I guess I feel uncomfortable to go against
and
the
no one
conductor's
stands up for her,
suggesting,
which
yeah.
I'm like, what? That is,
Yeah.
those dynamics are so hard.
Yeah. So it's understandable how you can get used to that power and that abuse that, because you feel just like you can kind of decide these things, and the whole orchestra that's used to following your lead all the time just kind of gets used to that role of like, okay, whatever the conductor suggests, we'll do it. I
Yeah,
guess,
but you see, that's another thing as well that is disappointing with her. She is so stuck in these power dynamics.
Right.
She doesn't realize that you need the orchestra just as much as they need you. There is no conductor without an orchestra.
Yeah.
And so when you're relating to people that you work with, for example, remember the camaraderie.
Yeah.
That is important. Remember that both of you depend on each other.
Exactly.
She doesn't treat people like that.
No.
She's manipulating. She gaslights. She's insensitive. She does not whatsoever reflect on how her behavior impacts other people. That is not a way to live. That is why you're haunted. That is why you're going crazy. And that's why in this movie we're trying to figure out whether or not this there are scenes happening. Because your psyche is coming. You're losing your mind because you have made people, every single person in your life is an enemy to you. Everyone becomes an enemy in your eyes, even if it's not true, because people aren't necessarily going to retaliate because people aren't necessarily like you, but because you know who you are, you look at people through your own lens. So if I'm treating you like this and I'm backstabbing you this way, you feel that you're probably going to do something given the chance. Do you know what I mean?
When someone who is normally very passionate about their craft or something starts to get too obsessive about it, and then they can't enjoy it anymore, then the obsession turns into mental illness, basically, and addiction. And so they become very cut off and isolated, and it destroys them. It turns into obsession and sickness. I think that's what happens to her.
I was just thinking about how she is in the beginning. You look at her, and from the very first scene, I felt like she seemed like those annoying people who know that they're smart. Arrogant virtuosos, right? Like you have people, we know people in the world who are smart. They are aware of it, but they don't act with that kind of arrogance. They don't enjoy the superiority they feel over other people. She enjoys it and inflicts it at every turn, every opportunity. And it's so hard to sympathize with someone who does that.
There's an expectation reward cycle with some works, and there's spots in them that I find so incredible that when I'm conducting, it's not that I'm rushing exactly, but I just can't wait to get to that spot. And yeah, it does it every time.
God, it was just like, she knows that nobody here can say that I'm not smart because I am an EGOT.
We're all here discussing my achievements.
Exactly.
But probably a lot of people are just like, because it's easy to zone out when you don't feel like the person is being real with you or being respectful or humble or open.
And that's where I'm like, despite your accomplishments to me,
yeah,
I don't think that you're someone that I can look up to.
An ill character. Maybe it's not right to play Lydia Tarr's music because of her character and how awful a character she had.
I don't know. I have to reflect on it because I've never actually grappled. We've tried.
Yeah.
There are some actors that we were cut.
There's always an individual decision on kind of like how far is it beyond the pale versus, you know, for each person what they can tolerate, I guess, or what they feel is understandable, allowable.
Yeah, it is also very hard when those actors or celebrities it's now in the moment, unlike someone who passed away hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
But when you like, oh my God, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to watch that movie that guy came out with. If you're really immersed in this guy's art and he's alive or she's alive and they do something bad, it feels so devastating. And it feels like your whole life you got to change gears now. You can't watch that thing anymore without feeling like a horrible person. Yeah. Are you a horrible person or is this just art?
It's like, I guess, like someone finding out a family member was a murderer or something, and then you have to come to grips with like,
do I still love them?
Yeah, how do I
feel guilty for loving?
How do I accept that?
Yeah. And that's why I think that I can't say whether or not Lydia or that other guy is right. That's a good example. Because if your brother or your mom or your dad turns out that they're a murderer, you have a certain relationship. They didn't murder you. They loved you as a mother, brother, or sibling would. And you had this loving relationship. Yeah. And then all of a sudden he's killing people in the background.
Yeah, so that's what we could glean, what we tried to put together.
It was hard.
In terms of thoughts. Yeah, it was a tougher one.
Really,
it was a tough one. There was a lot of stuff. But that was some stuff that we thought about Tar. What do you guys think? If you've seen it, let us know in the comments down below. Share your thoughts on our thoughts. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Bye.
Peace.